Welcome to the 77%, the show for you, Africa's youth. I'm bringing you this week's show from Accra, Ghana's capital. The International Day Against Homophobia was held recently, and that is why we are dedicating this show to Africa's LGBTQ+ community. That's lesbians, gays, transgender, bisexual, queer, and anybody else who doesn't fit within society's gender structures. For us at Deutsche Welle, issues concerning the LGBTQ+ community are important because we believe in the rights and protections of all minorities. So here's what's coming up. We'll look at how the LGBTQ+ community is marginalized across Africa. We'll meet a Ugandan photographer who tells queer stories and take a barefoot walk around with musician Wanlov the Kubolor. Earlier this year, the house behind me was the focus of a hot debate over LGBTQ+ rights. For the first time, members of Ghana's queer community had a center, a place where they could feel safe. But that was short-lived. Shortly after Ghana's first so far and only public space for the LGBTQ+ community opened, police, the landlord, and some traditional rulers stormed the center. They threatened to burn it down. Donkor, who organized a safe space, barely got out in time.
I had to pass through the back door and then escape the situation because from experience, a lot of times these police officers and media persons would parade an individual and already criminalize the individual before justice is will even be served. And I felt that that was going to be the situation for me should I still be in the space.
Ghanaian law doesn't permit same-sex relationships. Those arrested face 5 to 25-year jail sentences. And although no one has ever been imprisoned for homosexuality, homophobia is deeply rooted in Ghanaian society.
I think with the LGBT rights, we don't have to condone such acts because I think it's flouts on our traditions. It's flouts on our our customs. It's something that we didn't grow up with.
It is not an African thing. We are not into this. Our ancestors did not train us into this. And it is a taboo. So we don't need it here. Purely, we don't need it.
The raid sparked public debate in Ghana. Threats against Donkor and others have gotten worse, but they are not alone. International celebrities like movie star Idris Elba and supermodel Naomi Campbell have shown solidarity. Many of them have signed an open letter in support of Ghana's LGBTQ+ community. But these actions have done little to change the mood in Ghana. In fact, lawmakers are seeking to criminalize the promotion of LGBTQ+ issues. Despite the threats and increased scrutiny, Donkor and his colleagues won't give up the fight for an equal Ghana for everyone. Despite all of the pressure, Donkor has agreed to speak with us. Thank you, Alex, for your bravery.
Pleasure is all mine.
First, we are interested, Alex, in understanding how the situation of sexual minorities has changed since the closure of the LGBTQ+ center.
The closure of the space has led to the lack of services that we would have provided for the LGBTQ community, right? The psychosocial services, the paralegal services, the health assistance that we could provide for the community is no more there as a result of the closure of the space. There is also increased violence as a result of the narrative or the rhetoric that has been put out there by politicians, opinion leaders, religious people. There is also currently some members of parliament putting out a bill that further criminalize LGBTQ persons in Ghana.
Why do people think that this center is a threat?
Well, that will be a question for these people, right? Because we try to explain things to them to get them to understand that the center was actually meant to provide support to ordinary Ghanaians, right? People who are discriminated as a result of their known or perceived sexual orientation or gender identity, and these people are equal Ghanaians, right? Yeah. So, for instance, there's been numerous occasions where LGBTQ persons go to the police station to report issues of abuse to the police, and they end up being discriminated against even at the police station. The very institution that has been given the mandate to protect every Ghanaian, there are those who go to the hospital, and just by their mannerisms and their behavior alone, they are discriminated against and end up not being given the basic services that they need to be provided for.
When I sit in the trotros, I hear people talk about you. You've become the focus of religious sermons. You've become the center of social discussions. How does that make you feel?
It's actually hurtful, but it's not just even limited to myself, right? Interestingly enough, so many other queer persons in Ghana also experience that, and some of them is like, oh, beat them, stone them, burn them, and all of those things that actually takes a human life are some of the things that I hear people say. But of course, it's unfortunate that people are also going with that kind of narrative, right? That is also because of what people have been fed, right? They have been fed with very negative narrative about the community, one that demonizes the community and puts the community in bad light.
And you stand at the center of all of this as a person. How do you feel hearing your name on the radio, people discussing you without probably even speaking to you to get your opinion?
Right, that is unfortunate, right? Because the narrative, I believe, should come from the people who are affected by all of these challenges that they are facing or experiences here in Ghana. But interestingly, we have been dismissed, and then we have been taken out of the whole narrative. Rather, homophobes, people who are already against the community, are the ones who are given the platform to speak about issues that affect us as a community. And that is how come it is increasing the violence against the community. I believe that it is about time that we open the discussion for us to have a very constructive discussion about LGBTQ issues. Because LGBTQ persons are the everyday normal people that we see on a daily basis.
As you've just heard, Ghana isn't exactly a queer-friendly country. But how is the situation like across other African countries? I asked some of my colleagues.
Many have been arrested and tried in court. Nigeria's LGBTQ+ community is well aware of the risks.
Isolated attacks on the community often happen, with 64% of gay men often being rejected by their own families.
President Yoweri Museveni has previously called gay people disgusting.
Homosexuality does and always has existed in Nigerian society. In 2014, the government passed the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act into law, which makes same-sex relationships a crime punishable by up to 14 years in jail. Although no one has been given the full sentence yet, many have been arrested and tried in court. Nigeria's LGBTQ+ community is well aware of the risks, so they explore their sexuality in secret or even get married to hide their identity.
The LGBTQ pride flag flies peacefully, but the community is less recognized in the country. The general attitudes towards same-sex relations are negative, and isolated attacks on the community often happen, with 64% of gay men often being rejected by their own families. Unlike in the neighboring South Africa, where same-sex unions are permitted, Zimbabwe's constitution prohibits gay marriages. Zimbabwe laws criminalizes sodomy but are not clear on homosexuality. This is in clear violation of international human rights instruments such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, to which Zimbabwe is a signatory.
In Uganda, anything LGBTQ+ can be controversial. Many people here are religious and publicly homophobic. For instance, President Yoweri Museveni has previously called gay people disgusting. Just recently, at the beginning of May, Uganda's parliament passed a new bill that further criminalizes same-sex relationships. The MPs have proposed a maximum of 10 years in jail for what they call unnatural acts. Gay rights activists have vowed to challenge the new legislation in courts of law, just like they successfully did back in 2014, when Parliament wanted to imprison gays for life. The LGBTQ+ maintained that they offend no one for their choice to love each other. Uganda's parliament says that it mirrors the society where most people hold the view that being gay is immoral.
Unfortunately, as you've just seen, the situation isn't very different in other African countries. Earlier this year, there was a massive outpouring of support from international celebrities, Idris Elba, Naomi Campbell. How has that helped the situation?
It is good that all of these celebrities and all of these institutions are calling out Ghana to be a better place for all of us to live in. Ghana is a signatory to almost all the UN treaties, so it means that Ghana has the responsibility to accord all of these rights to its citizens, right? But then this is a case where that isn't happening. So it means that every human rights organization, every institution that uphold and believe in human rights, this is the time to speak up against the injustice that other Ghanaians are going through in this country as a result of their known or perceived sexual orientation.
And how can the ordinary Ghanaian help to become better allies?
I think the onus falls on us to be a better people, right? And by being better people, I believe that we need to open the conversation up for Ghanaians to understand what it means to be an LGBTQ person, right? All this while, like I mentioned earlier, the narrative has been shaped by homophobes. And that is how come people have the idea about pampers and diapers. It's ridiculous in the 21st century for some people to think that it is okay to discriminate against other people based on their sexual orientation and gender identity. I think it is about time that we open the conversation, one that is unbiased, one that allows for the other side to speak about the issues that affects them, so that we can all come to an amicable solution to the challenges that we are facing. You cannot dismiss LGBTQ persons. LGBTQ persons exist, and we will continuously exist. The fact that people are uncomfortable about LGBTQ persons doesn't mean that they need to be discriminated against or anything. I believe it's about time that we open up as a community or as a society and allow for every citizen to live out to their full potential and play their quota towards the development of this country. And that will mean that equal protection for every citizen, irrespective of their sexual orientation, gender identity, their race, their color, their religion, whatsoever.
What I gather from this conversation is respect. Respect is the key word. You need to respect people, regardless of what their views or orientations are. But if you were wondering, what is all of this LGBTQ+? Well, somebody has the same question. And fortunately, our sex and relationship expert, Kaz, has some answers.
Hello there and welcome to The Spread, a safe space where we get to discuss everything sex and relationships. Today we have a question on gender and sexual diversity. The question reads, hey Kaz, as a person trying to be a better LGBTQ+ ally, I'm finding it hard to understand all the new language around gender, sexuality, and sex. Is there a way you can simplify it for me so I can better understand how to conduct myself in spaces where I meet diverse groups? I'd really appreciate it. Thanks. Let's start by creating 3 boxes: biological or assigned sex, gender, and sexual orientation. Each of these boxes has many subsections, but we'll focus on the most important points. The first box, biological sex, is what the doctor uses to identify you at birth based on your genitalia. Most of the time, it's either male or female, but there are also cases where one is born with both male and female genitalia. That person is known as intersex. The second box is gender. Gender is a social construct. It's what society throws at you to place you in a binary box of either male or female. For example, dolls and the color pink are said to belong to only girls, whereas trucks and the color blue are said to belong to only boys. But not everybody conforms to this gender binary. Gender identity comes from your inner sense of self and may not align with the sex that you were assigned at birth. You could be male, female, both, neither, or some other gender. And this could mean, for example, that you're not comfortable with the pronouns he or she and would rather be referred to as they or them, for example. The third box is sexual orientation. This has to do with the attraction that you have to a person based on their gender, which could be romantic, emotional, or physical. Men and women strictly attracted to the opposite gender are known as heterosexual. If you're attracted to someone of the same gender, you could be homosexual. If you're attracted to someone regardless of their sex or gender identity, you could be pansexual. Keep in mind that this really is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to learn about the LGBTQ+ community. I hope this has been helpful, and I do urge you to keep doing your research online. Well-informed allies like you are very important. That's it from me, Kaz. Till next time, goodbye.
Thank you, Kaz. Now I want to introduce you to a fascinating photographer. Dilovi Kwagala's work focuses on changing perceptions and fighting stereotypes.
It's a small private photo shoot at Dilovi Kwagala's home in Kampala. Today's work is part of Dilovi's gender identity project, The Queendom, a photo series documenting queer people across Africa.
So now give me an eye. With photography, I found my voice. As a queer person, you know, in a country where it's, you know, like illegal to be yourself, I want to normalize, you know, the indifference that comes with us, you know. Because when I tackle topics like gender identity or sexuality, or the stereotypes of beauty, you know, where they have to say that boys can't do makeup, or like flowers are for boys, for girls, and like, you know, boys can't wear dresses. For me, in my world, that doesn't apply, because I feel like, you know, it should be a free world of like free expression.
The 26-year-old identifies as non-binary queer. This means that Dilovi doesn't identify as a man or a woman, and consequently wants to be referred to as they or them rather than he or she. Yet in Uganda, telling LGBTQ stories and being part of the minority queer community is anything but easy.
I had my first camera confiscated because, you know, I was in someone's backyard, you know, like shooting, you know, like my queer friends for the Queendom project. Sometimes I'm afraid to get out of the house because on the streets, I've been called a pig because I simply have a septum. And they can be worse.
Arrests, intimidation and mistreatment are no strangers in Uganda's queer community. But the threats and insults have not pushed Dilovi off their course. The photographer believes that every community, whether queer, young, old, rich or poor, should be able to tell its stories. In Zambia, one of Kampala's biggest slums, Dilovi inspires the next generation of photographers.
It's good. You actually did so.
They teach photography for the Heart of Dance African Rhythm Project, a local NGO which helps children here learn new skills.
You know, it's
Dilovi thinks the kids are bursting with potential.
something you should always avoid. Like, just because they are young in age doesn't mean they are not able to acquire the skill. Just because they are young in age doesn't mean they are not able to tell a story. Everyone has a story, whether they are 6, whether they are 12, whether like, you know, 17 or whatever. Like, everyone has a story because we all go through different, you know, circumstances where we grow up from, you know. So it's important to be able like to share.
Back home, Dilovi's daughter Favor is also trying her hands at photography. The 7-year-old documents the world around her, taking cues and tips from her parent.
I was like taking a memory from like for myself. So like when she's gone or something, I can just get the camera and look at the memories.
As a child, Favour is surrounded by people of varying gender identities. It's a world where it doesn't matter what she wears or whether she wants to play with dolls, footballs or cameras. Favour often joins in during photo sessions, and in her, Delavi sees an empowered upcoming generation of storytellers.
I'm trying to change the narrative, you know. I'm trying to, you know, to defy the stereotypes, because I feel like there's a lot of like misconceptions of things that have, you know, like brought onto us.
More acceptance, more open-mindedness, and freedom to love who one wants and express oneself. That's what Delavi wants. And they hope that photography can inspire this, one shot at a time.
In our next story, we meet Wanlov the Kubolor. Kubolor is a music icon, a film director, and an activist. He's one of a few musicians here in Ghana who advocate tolerance for the country's queer community. But that's not the only reason why he's a bit controversial.
Barefoot with a wild mane of dreadlocks, Emmanuel Owusu Bonzo stands out on the streets of Accra. Best known by his stage name, Wanlov the Kubolor, the Ghanaian-Romanian musician is known for his distinctive style as much as his controversial songs.
I mean, the first time people see me, they look around at each other to try and see if somebody has an explanation for what they are seeing. But after seeing me 1, 2, 3 times, people get used to me. And me not wearing shoes is because everywhere in the world I go, I remember how the ground feels like. I have a memory of the ground in Paris or the ground in Ninja. Everywhere I've been barefoot, I remember the ground, you know. And so I can't like close the eyes of my feet anymore by wearing shoes.
Kubolor, which means vagabond in the local Ga language, began his music career over a decade ago. As well as performing as a solo artist, he's also one half of the duo FOK and Boys. The enfant terrible of Ghana's hip life movement has carved out his own musical niche, somewhere between pidgin rap and gypsy style, and sometimes shocks audiences with his playfully crude lyrics.
I make whatever feels true to me and I use it to speak truth. So I call it true music, but I can do whatever kind of music I feel, because we are now in a world where we are exposed to so many types of sounds and visuals growing up. So you are shorting yourself if you say, oh, this is the kind of music I do.
But what Wanlov wants to achieve with his music above all is bringing about a change of mindset in the deeply conservative Ghanaian society. Over the years, he has spoken out for LGBTQ+ rights. But his activism has triggered some backlash, especially on social media.
People think I've been given €1 million from some organization in Europe to promote homosexuality. Because we are not educated, we do not know that most of the laws we are dealing with that are anti-poor people and anti-LGBTQ and anti-women are all European laws. So we are trying to remove those laws, but the average Ghanaian who has been miseducated sees it as we are trying to instill European values, but we are simply trying to reinstill the African way.
Today he's on the set of his upcoming music video. His latest track deals with the abuse of Ghana's LGBTQ+ community. But Wanlov admits even he wasn't always an ally to queer people. It was only around 10 years ago that he started to change his mindset.
Now I look at our society here in Ghana and I see the LGBT community as the most important marginalized group of people that will liberate the whole consciousness of Ghanaians, you know. Once we are able to turn or reprogram our psyche to show love and equality and compassion to this marginalized group of human beings, we will excel as a people, as a country.
Wanlov the Kubolor is definitely one of the most divisive figures on Ghana's music scene, but his willingness to push boundaries is undoubtedly opening doors and amplifying his voice.
We've come to the end of this week's show. I hope it helped you to better understand Africa's LGBTQ plus community. And you can write to us and tell us what you think about the topics that we have covered at 77@dw.com or via social media. Earlier, you saw Wanlov the Kubolor working on a music video. And here it is, fresh out of the editing suite. Enjoy. And until next time, thanks for watching.
Actually, I'm not sorry.